I don't know. Well. Are we ready? Yes? Good afternoon. On the Encounter's behalf, I welcome those who are here at the Metropolitan Pavilion and all those that are online. My name is Tom Tobin. I'm a high school teacher. That's why I have to stand up when I speak. Everyone else is sitting there. I'm from Wheaton, Maryland, close to Washington, D.C., and I'm the moderator of this event. I'll start just by saying what will happen in the next hour. We're going to present a remarkable new book, which is now newly available in English, The Miracle of Hospitality, which is available out at the book table. I was given the advanced copy to prepare for this event over the holidays, and from Don Giussani to a group of Italian parents who were known as the Welcoming Families. This was an event that happened in Italy in the 1980s. There were a group of families that began to take in adopted kids, foster kids, handicapped kids, and then later it expanded in many directions, like Grania and I did, young adults who needed a hand, people who lived near hospitals, who needed to be able to see their loved ones who were hospitalized. And this movement grew, and then they felt the need for a kind of companionship and support within this, and it became an association, and that association spread. It spread throughout Italy. It spread to 4 different European countries, then to Brazil, and to Argentina. So this is something that kind of happened somewhat spontaneously out of the life of the movement of communion and liberation. So it kind of came from the life that Don Giussani brought in the world. But he also guided it and deepened it, and he pointed to it. If you read the book, as I hope you will, it's clear that Don Giussani had a particular affection for this group, this movement that was happening, and really pointed to it throughout the addresses that he gives. He's like, look at what these people are doing. I'm going to read a quote from the book. This is from a 1988 meeting with the Welcoming Families. Giussani says, "You have a great responsibility because the Welcoming Families is a work that should inspire the whole movement, all the families in the movement, as I said this morning. In front of certain facts, we cannot stand by indifferently, either with an admiration from a distance or with a brief emotion that makes us go on as if nothing happened. Approaching certain experiences which other people have should be determining for us." And this is a point he keeps coming back to in the book, is that what these people are living is a truth. It's a truth deeper than some good thing that they're doing. It educates all of us to the truth of our being, that we must live an experience in our lives of being welcomed, beginning from gratitude, and from that to live this whole spirit of welcoming. And so much of the book is this deepening of that. So what I'm going to do for just a minute before we hear from our different panelists is just briefly lay out some of the themes that run through the whole book, because there are different addresses, and yet there are certain points that he constantly returns to, deepens, expresses in a different way. So I'm going to identify just a few of those and present them. The first is this, and I kind of touched on that already. People need to be welcomed in order to welcome. The beginning of a real generosity is a receptivity. It keeps returning to this, that if what we do in gestures like this doesn't have at its root a kind of gratitude, it can't be sustained over time. I mean, I know from our own experience of this that it's hard, and you can hit your limit if it really is simply a matter of your energy and your goodwill, your intentions. Again, a quote Don Giussani, "If we do not feel welcomed or loved in the first place, we cannot share anything." In other words, we cannot make our presence part of another's presence. We cannot open our presence to welcome the presence of an other. So this is a work that can't be just sustained by our desire to do a good thing. We welcome others to a place where our own brokenness, our own need has been embraced, and therefore there's a possibility to do this. The second point is this: belonging to a companionship is crucial. Again, quote Don Giussani, "There is no authentic gratuity if we do not live with gratitude for the charity with which Christ has touched our lives through the lives of others, the encounter with a companionship. Without faithfulness to the companionship that we met, our charity would be false. It would not make history, that is, it would not truly contribute as it should to the kingdom of God and to the building up of the kingdom of God." So these gestures, as he began to talk to these families and deepen their own awareness, he kept emphasizing this. You have to belong. You have to belong to a companionship. And I'll just offer a little anecdote here because Grania and I say, we took in these young adults at different times. And the very first, I reached a moment where his conduct, I was so frustrated with his conduct. I said to him, "You're only in this house because my wife loves you," which was not a charitable thing to say, but for me at that moment, it was absolutely true. I had really reached my limit of patience with Thera, but it also touched on a truth that because Grania really had a deeper commitment, she really looked upon him as a mother. She had really kind of made that choice, just a deeper choice than I had. That my limit was not the limit, I think this is a beautiful thing that he keeps touching on in this work, that within a communion, when you reach your limit, it's not the limit, that you're kind of pulled on by another. And this is, again, something that's not just true for these particular gestures, it's true of life. And I think Giussani in this book keeps coming back to that this isn't a program to do a certain kind of gesture. This gesture done in a certain way is an education to life. Another point here, it is a work that needs to be gratuitous. This is a word that he keeps returning to, this word gratuity, from Don Giussani. "Hospitality does not mean giving something, but giving everything. It is the implication of a whole life. To welcome another means to put our house, our time, and our energy at the disposal of another, that I become totally involved. It doesn't have calculation. And this is a beautiful thing, but I think this is what we aspire to, what we help each other live. I've always admired a couple in our community that were foster parents, and they took in first a boy and then later his half-sister. And in time, the girl they took in has done very well. She's in a stable marriage. She has a little company that she and her husband run. And the boy has continued to have problems with substance abuse, jobs, legal issues. But I was always so struck that there wasn't like a success and a failure, or they ever calculated, I'm proud of this, this didn't work. They just stayed with those two. And to me, it was always a witness of this gratuity that you take. He said, everything is at play when you do this gesture truly. Everything is at play, and it's not a matter of calculation. There's this generosity. A final point is perhaps something I've already touched on several times from the book, that welcoming is a profound human gesture that goes deeper than taking people into your home. Again, to quote Father Giussani, welcoming is the embrace of what is different, and for this reason it has to do with all our relationships. The embrace of diversity is called forgiveness because to embrace someone different demands first that we forgive him. To forgive means to affirm, under all the ugliness, what is true and right, good and beautiful. To affirm the being that is the other, the being of the other. Your being is greater and deeper, more important than thousands of your sins. So, this point is what he does in the book is he continually calls people to go to the depth of what they're doing and to see that, to understand this gesture in its depth is something that educates you to all of life. And this idea of accepting the other, accepting difference, a number of points he says, this is what's true of marriage. You enter into a marriage, and at a certain point it becomes clear that you have to love and embrace the freedom of one who is simply different from you. However much it might have seemed easy and glamorous, in an early period, there's a moment when you have to make that choice, to embrace the other in their own freedom and in their own way. And he was saying, and this is with children. I mean, it's every child. I remember with our first son, you think, okay, now I know what it is to be a father. Then the next one comes along and you realize, no, I don't. I don't know. This one, it's not the same thing, and then you're kind of educated to the point of difference and accepting difference. But you're saying, this is what these gestures educate us to in their depth, is a general attitude of this welcoming that which is other than me. Okay, how am I doing? What is that thing, 10?
It's a 6.
It's a 6? Oh,
Yeah, it's a 6.
oh, I did very well.
Took me a while to figure it out.
Okay, so I'm going to introduce our panelists now, and we're going to hear from them. I'm very, very grateful for our first panelists because they've had quite a drama before able to speak to us. Nate and Ashley Kaufman are not here right now because not long before they traveled from Nebraska, their home to here, Nate had a health crisis that put him in the hospital. So, but being the hardy Westerner that he is, they're going to Zoom, and they're from their hospital in Nebraska. So, Nate and Ashley Kaufman live in Omaha. They've been married 8 years, and they're foster parents to 3 young girls. So they'll explain they took 2, and then by a little surprise they got another. Nate graduated from the University of Nebraska, Omaha, and works as a software engineer. Ashley obtained her doctorate of audiology degree from the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, and currently works with children and adults who are deaf and hard of hearing as an audiologist for Boys Town National Research Hospital, a very famous place. Thank you so much for your courageous gesture in hanging in there and sharing your story with us. So if you could please tell us your experience of hospitality.
Yes, thank you, Tom, for the introduction, and we're so happy to be speaking today. We wish we could be with you, but this is just how it goes, and we'll share a little bit of our journey of hospitality through both adoption and foster care. We think it would be helpful to share a little background information on our journey and what has brought us to this point. Ashley and I, as you mentioned, were married a little over 8 years ago, and right off the bat, we knew biological children were not in our future. I have a genetic disease called cystic fibrosis, which makes having biological children difficult, to say the least. And we discussed it prior to getting married, and both agreed we felt a call to pursuing adoption. Around 2 years into marriage, we began our adoption journey with an open adoption program, and this just simply means that the biological mother picks the adoptive family and they maintain open communication and contact throughout the child's life. It was during our adoption experience that we were invited to a weekend retreat with other families in the movement who had either fostered children, have adopted children of their own, or who are raising children with special needs. During this weekend, we had the pleasure of meeting some incredible families, such as Rick and Maria Chiara, with whom we shared similar experiences. We were also introduced to this book by Father Giussani called The Miracle of Hospitality. It was in this work we were introduced to the idea of what hospitality is. Giussani described it as nothing short of man's greatest imitation of the love with which God loves man, and therefore the love that constitutes the life of God. Through the words of Giussani in this book and the witness of these families who were living out this hospitality, we became more aware of what we were being called to. Adoption was not simply a method of obtaining a child for our family, but a calling to a life that would require depending on Christ in a way we hadn't experienced before. A life where he could continually ask us for our openness to situations where we may not know the outcome.
We were in our infant adoption program for almost 5 years. And to be honest, they were really difficult 5 years, and so often very emotionally draining. We would go months without hearing anything about new potential adoptions. And then all of a sudden, we would get a phone call about a biological mother that was looking at our profile. And there was always this hope that would enter in, and we would think maybe this is the one. And so everything would stop while we waited. And many of these cases were last-minute phone calls. So we wouldn't make plans with anyone just in case. And I would scramble to get everything in order at work so that if I all of a sudden needed to be home for 2 months with a baby, my patients were still taken care of. And During that time, we experienced 6 potential adoptions and 3 changes of heart. And that means that a birth mother picks you to be the adoptive parents, and then oftentimes after the baby is born, changes her mind and decides to parent her baby. So the first change of heart was due to just some unforeseen circumstances in her legal case, but it was during this time that we received one of our first great lessons in practicing hospitality. I remember telling a dear priest friend of ours that we were excited about this potential of bringing this little girl home, but we didn't want to become too hopeful or too attached in case it didn't work out. And he reminded us that if we loved this baby, we needed to love her right now, fully, without reserve, whether we ever got to bring her home or whether she was in our care for a minute or a lifetime. And what he challenged us with that day reminded us of a section in The Miracle of Hospitality, where Giussani says that the duration with which one lives hospitality does not matter. When a child is entrusted to you, whether it be for a minute or a month, you can truly live hospitality because your heart has an openness that is not fixed or measured by the amount of time. It has more to do with the totality of your eye. If you do not block your embrace according to your own preoccupations. And I think this is kind of what made our second change of heart all the more devastating, because we approached it with this openness. So about a year after this first change of heart, we were asked if we were open to our second adoption possibility. We were asked on a Wednesday if we would like to adopt Sophia, and her mother was scheduled for a C-section 2 days later. So we frantically called friends to gather supplies. We picked up a car seat. We began getting ready for the addition of a new baby. And when we met with the birth mother, she explained to us why she picked us. And her reasons seemed so true to who Nate and I were. She really seemed to see us for our personalities and loved us for that we really thought this baby was the one. And so she wanted us to pick Sophia's name, and she asked that I be her support person in the hospital. So I was in the operating room. I was the first person to hold Sophia, and I got to spend 3 days caring for her. Nate and I felt an instant and overwhelming love for this little girl with chubby, chubby cheeks. And a day after Sophia and her mother were discharged from the hospital, her mom began to change her heart. And the next day, we received the news that Sophia would be staying with her mother. The moments after this decision were extremely difficult for us. I cried for days at the loss of this little girl. And yet, they were moments for us where we once again were offered the space and opportunity to deepen our understanding of what hospitality is. To live in such a way comes with a risk because you're opening yourself up without holding anything back. And it was the faces of our friends and our family that helped us see the beauty of that risk, because in all honesty, in that moment, we couldn't see it. So it was the friends who showed up at our house unexpectedly, even when we weren't really feeling up to company, people that sat with us, cried with us, who began to take weekly walks with us, and who asked us the question of, if you could go back in time and do this all over again, would you? And at that time, without fully understanding why, we both knew that we would.
It was several more years without being matched in the program. We prayerfully decided to move on. And yet the experience of Sophia showed us we still had the capacity and the desire to welcome a face or faces we had yet to meet. It was at that time we didn't feel comfortable choosing a new adoption program, and we truly felt we were done. So we began to look into foster care. I think we sometimes still ask ourselves how we moved on from adoption to foster care, knowing that with the goal of reunification of children in foster care with their biological parents, we would be experiencing that same feeling of loss that we had with Sophia, but over and over and over again. Looking back, I think we can now say there was a growth and maturity from our experience. It had become less about possessing this idea of what we thought a family should look like, and more about opening our home to someone in need without expectation. We had the freedom to now say, okay, God, you have carried us this far. We can take a few steps more. And there was so much evidence of the fact to your presence that we were going to step out in faith with you again. That's the only explanation I think we have for it. We applied for the Boys Town foster program, filled out a mountain of paperwork, completed background checks, attended a 12-week training class, and were approved for the program. And then once the state approval came through, things moved very fast. Within a week of our approval, we were asked if we would take in two sisters, a 15-month-old and a 2.5-year-old. And they had already been in the foster system for several months prior. And once we had said yes, their current foster family literally dropped them off on our porch with all their belongings without saying so much as a goodbye. I remember thinking, is this how this typically goes? This is nuts. But right away, we felt so much empathy for them because of the fear and uncertainty they must have felt. The older one of the two walked into our house and proceeded to throw every toy we had procured across the room, hit and kicked and screamed whenever she didn't get her way, and the younger sibling cried for all but 2 hours of the first 3 nights in our home. And they were just simply trying to find their foothold in a world that had been turned upside down. And honestly, so were we. It was a tremendous undertaking at first to adjust to a life with children, children who weren't born to us, who had had drug exposure and trauma in their history, and all the while navigating the system of agencies and people we had no prior experience with. Boys Town had prepared us as best they could, and we now know that foster care is really something you can never fully prepare for. All we could do once again was take one step at a time in trust and dependence. It was 2 months after welcoming the girls into our home, still in the midst of trying to develop consistency, find time to sleep, and maintain sanity. We were actually approached by a local women's shelter that Sophia's mom had lived in, and informing us that there was a pregnant mother there who wanted to make an adoption plan and asked if we were open to another adoption. It was almost laughable. We just had moved on from the adoption world, invested ourselves in the lives of these two little girls, and now we were once again asked for our openness. So we said yes, and Ashley was the support person again for the birth mother and was in the room at the time of his birth. But again, less than 24 hours later, we experienced our third change of heart. The funny thing is then 2 weeks after that moment, we were then informed that our foster daughter's mother was pregnant again, and the baby would almost certainly be entering the foster system when she was born. With the goal of keeping siblings together, DHHS let us know that we would be the first family they would ask to take this newborn baby. Having just said yes to the girls and still trying to get our feet on solid ground, and having then just experienced our third change of heart, we were not prepared to say yes again.
Our initial response was just that there was no possible way that we could keep doing this. We wanted off this emotional roller coaster. And knowing this baby could also have drug exposures, we wondered if we could even handle, potential health complications this baby might have. 2 toddlers. Nate was in graduate school at the time, his health complications, and all the while both of us working full time. So all these same questions and doubts returned. And while everything seemed next to impossible, we knew something was being asked of us, and we wanted to take that question seriously. So in an effort to gain clarity in our answer, we began to reread The Miracle of Hospitality. As we reread the book, we began to find our footing again. So practically, not only did we just gain more experience as parents, but our bond and attachment with the older girls grew, and their physical, mental, and social development improved significantly. But Father Giussani's words again strengthened our hearts and desire to live hospitality in the way that he described. He was mirroring our own experiences in much of what he said. So at one point in the book, he says, loving God is affirming that existence is goodness, that you live this generosity with awareness. The more your generosity will not be at the mercy of your desires, of your tiredness, of your feelings. Otherwise, feeling, instinct, how things seem to be going will be the measure of what you do. And when you reach your limit, you say, no, it is not possible to do anything else. I cannot do this. This awareness of the relationship with Christ multiplies the strength of imagination, multiplies the energy of dedication, and makes us persevere. We realized in this moment that we're not living out of our dependence and gratuity, but we were trying to make a decision based on the measure of our own capacity. Shortly after, I was reading the book again, and I came across a passage where Father Giussani says, just think the first word the mystery spoke to man was, do not be afraid. Do not be afraid. To do what you do, you need to be not afraid. If one is afraid, it is impossible for him to stand. But it is also impossible that the idea of standing even crosses his mind. This is for me, one of the reasons that Mary's yes has always been so incredible to me. Her simplicity to say yes without fear and with total trust in the Lord. I remember reading that section and then laughing out loud, looking at Nate and saying, I think I know why we haven't made a decision about this baby. We already know what God is asking of us. We're simply too afraid to say yes.
And for myself, at one point, I had thought about this, and this little baby had to go somewhere when he or she was born. We didn't know she was a girl at the time, whether it was with us or another foster family. And I was thinking, what is it about this other family's freedom that would allow them to say yes at a time when we felt like we couldn't? So we simply began to ask God for this freedom, and slowly all the perceived impediments to our yeses began to fall like dominoes. And we ended up saying yes to our third foster daughter. And after she was born, we were actually afforded the opportunity to visit her in the NICU. She was there for 2 weeks. And it wasn't until I held her for the first time and gazed down at her face and feeble body that all my previous doubts and fears seemed insignificant. That essentially there was no way I could have ever said no to this face. Our older girls have now been with us 16 months, and our youngest is 4.5 months. And we love these girls with all our heart. And life has been really good, but to be honest, very hard at times too. 2 toddlers and a baby is just hard, plain and simple. We've had days where we thought, why are we doing this again? But the girls' trauma cannot be erased. And while we have mentioned the progress the girls have made, what is actually most striking, I think, to us is the progress that we have made in caring for these girls. Our capacity for love and patience has grown, and we have found a dimension of joy that we may never have found if we had not been able to say yes to what God was asking of us. I speak for Ashley as well, but some of our favorite parts of the day are walking over to the baby's bassinet, which is next to our bed, and peeking my head over the side and seeing her giant grin, just looking up at me with this face of recognition. Or picking up the girls from daycare and watching them run across the room with huge smiles on their faces. And if we had been closed off to that, we may never have experienced that depth of love. We've encountered this quite a few times, but often when somebody finds out that we're foster parents, they respond with this, oh, I could never do that. I would get too attached. We've learned that this is the whole point. Attachment is one of the greatest gifts a foster parent can give their foster child. And children don't just need homes and food and caretakers. They need families who are willing to give them their hearts, who are with them in their need, and who love them as their own and get too attached. And I love how Giussani puts it when he references the story of the tax collector Zacchaeus in the gospel, as he does so often. When Jesus approached Zacchaeus in the tree, he didn't say, listen up, give back what you have taken, be good, don't rob anyone anymore, but instead told him simply, I must stay at your house today. That is, I am with you. And hospitality is this being with.
At the end.
Don't stop clapping. Don't stop clapping.
Oh. If you could, we had a little problem with the sound here. Just at the very end, please, if you could just repeat just those last phrases you were saying. You were quoting scripture.
What was the last thing you heard? I can, I'm not sure where we left off, but I can just say we've encountered this a few times. Where is it the quote from Giussani or?
The tax collector in the scripture.
Got it. Okay, thank you. I'm so sorry. I would just say, and I love how Giussani puts it, when he references the story of the tax collector and Zacchaeus in the as he does so often. When Jesus approached Zacchaeus in the tree, He didn't say, listen up, give back what you have taken, be good, don't rob anyone anymore. But he simply said, I must stay at your house today. That is, I am with you. And hospitality is this being with.
Thank you so much what you said. Just a question or two before we move on to our other panelists. One of the many things to me that's very striking in what you've said is the sense of calling that you had. At the very beginning, you said, this wasn't just a question of, adopting a child because you weren't able to have one, that it was a calling that you had, and that calling in turn deepened. So if you could please just tell us, it's striking to me because I mentioned at the beginning the experience that Grania and I had. I would say she had that sense of calling and I didn't. I kind of got it from her, over time. But I'm just curious why that was there at the first place, I guess, one, and then two, how did that sense of calling, vocation change as you went through all these challenges?
Yeah, that's a good question. Excuse me. It's interesting to me. I think we always had a sense of a desire for children in our lives, despite what would be the apparent difficulties of us having biological children. We always had this desire. We didn't know how that would look or what that would look like in the future. I think it really was simply us acting on this desire and moving forward with it in a practical way, and what that looked like. It was only until I think we were in it, when we were in the adoption process and the foster care process, that we began to understand more, I think, the depth of that. That it wasn't simply just us forming a family for the sake of it, or the attempt to form a family, I should say, when it came to the adoption process. But the calling there was a depth to it that we began to understand more. And I think through the light of, as you mentioned, the book, for sure, I think that helped us really understand what was at stake there, and that it wasn't, hospitality wasn't simply just inviting somebody in for the sake of it, but rather it had to be in this framework, I think, that the practice of hospitality wasn't simply this idea of welcoming another for the, in particular for the sake of it was the right thing to do. It wasn't enough, I think. It had to be instead through this reference point of an awareness of Christ's love for us, as a reflection of that gaze and profound depth of the love that he had for us. And I think otherwise our welcoming comes up against the measure of our own capacity, and it will always fall short. And we discovered that in very real ways, I think, with just, it was hard at times, and I know this to be true now, because when I approached the girls with this awareness of the depth of love that Jesus has for them, a miracle happens. It's the only way I can describe it. I think there's this wonder in the interactions between myself and them. Their response to me takes on this dynamic of delight, and I don't see that elsewhere. And for myself, my interactions with them become effortless. I think it's because it's no longer just my own capacity at play there, the capacity of my own patience, of my own desire to spend time with them, to play one more game, to read one more story, but rather mine and Christ's, which is boundless in nature. And I often think about the capacity of Christ that he must have for my own shortcomings and failings. He continually and without restriction accepts me time and time again. And just a small little anecdote, Ashley and I recently spent some time traveling to Hawaii, and unfortunately we couldn't bring the girls with us. It's often quite difficult to travel with foster children across state lines. And so while we were on vacation, the girls stayed in respite care, and Boys Town has a group of trusted respite families they utilize when their foster families need to be away for a time. And while we were away, we received a number of reports, both from daycare and the respite family, that the girls' behavior was, for lack of a better word, problematic. Just a lot of acting out. And we were fully expecting there to be a number of issues we need to address when we got back in order to get the girls back on track, to a state of normalcy. And instead, a miracle happened. And prior to picking them up, we had decided that come what may, we would approach them with this lightheartedness and awareness of Christ's love for them and us. And whatever new behaviors we saw, we would just roll with. And instead, it wasn't anything of the reports that we had received while we were away. There was this newness to our reunification between us and the girls. And we were just so excited to be together again. And it was so apparent in their joy and our energy. And it was quite simply one of the most enjoyable weeks together we've had with them. And Giussani refers to this as this creative capacity. And for myself, I've verified it to be true. And I think this goes back into this, that it has become more of a calling, or my awareness of such a fact has become more true as I tap into this kind of creative capacity that he speaks of. So I don't know if that answers your question, Tom.
And I don't think it was, in the beginning, I don't think we thought it was a calling. So in the beginning, it was a way to grow our family, that we felt comfortable with, that we wanted to pursue. But I think our first shift away from a method and towards a calling really happened on what we call lovingly call the hospitality weekend that we went on in Minnesota. And each of the families there went through their own journey, and hearing their stories and seeing that simply like approaching your children from your own ability or from your desire wasn't enough. I mean, these parents had something that seemed transcendent to themselves. They had this joy amongst themselves and their kids, and watching them parent was something I had never seen before. And these were parents who were going through some real struggles. And I just remember wanting that and realizing that I would never be enough. What I wanted, my desire, was not sufficient. And that if we were going to follow what Christ was asking of us, it was really going to have to be a calling and not just trying to fit my desires into a puzzle piece of what I thought he wanted or what I could make work.
Thank you so much. Thank you for... Now, thank you for all your words and your heroic effort just to join us today. Thank you.
You're very welcome.
We're going to introduce
Thank you so much for having us.
Second panelist. Full disclosure, these are old dear friends. Grania and I were married 26 years ago. This was my best man, and he still is my best man. But Rick and Chiara are parents of 4 children, between 15 and 23. One out of college in Davide, who will be starting high school next fall. Been married for almost 25 years. Rick is my fellow Washingtonian. We're a rare breed. Most people from Washington are born someplace else. And he's been working with software for all his life. Maria Chiara is from southern Italy, and she's a biomedical researcher. And then we're going to talk about their experience of hospitality.
Thank you, Tom. And good afternoon, and thank you for this opportunity to share my experience with you all. Although I feel very inadequate, I learned that when something is asked of me, it is not only something I'm giving to others, but it's really, truly for me. And I had a similar experience when I found out that I was pregnant. I was over 40 years old, and Rick and I were not thinking to have more kids. We could have more kids. And in that moment, I really felt prepared. I really felt wanted and chosen. And I was thinking, wow, me again, another kid, this beautiful gift, and this someone that loves me and trusts me with all my limits and my shortcomings, and Rick can add more to the list. entrust me with this gift. So moving forward, the first few months in the pregnancy, my doctor suggested me to go to a specialist clinic. And so there I had a very fancy sonogram, and after that, they told us that the baby had severe genetic problems. And so they were suggesting, pushing to have a more genetic test so they could understand better what was the problem. When we understood that those tests, that like villocentesis, amniocentesis, they carry risk of infection and miscarriage. So when we understood that that test was just for diagnosis, we declined it. For us, there was no question. We wanted to keep that baby no matter what. And even though at that moment, I didn't know what will be my future, as I didn't know what was going to be my future for the other kids, I had to go back to my experience of entrusted the womb that loved me, that loved us, and I had to entrust myself and my baby to him. At the moment I said yes to that baby and to that relationship, I was not afraid anymore. So then we were still in the hospital, in the office, doctor office, when Rick told me that he felt like Simon the Cyrene when the Roman asked Simon to carry Jesus' cross. He didn't want to carry Jesus' cross. We did want to carry that cross, the cross of a sick child, the cross of the pain if we will lose him or her. But I understood, Rick was underlined, that was so important. Rick underlined the importance of carry that cross to participate in Christ's passion, in that pain. I didn't fully understand. As you know, Rick is very intense. But for me, it was clear that I was not going to be alone. And in that moment, I also understand that we could not carry that alone. So we both in the office, we called on 2 different cell phones, our friends. We needed to share in that moment what we were going through. And that yes that we said to that baby was carried by so many friends and family. We were not alone to welcome this baby. And in that moment, I also understood what so many women are going through. Because in that office, I was the only thing that was really clearly told me was that the baby will suffer all his life. He will be in and out from hospitals. And I was very selfish to bring to the world a baby with such like that, a baby suffering, a suffering baby. And I understood the pressure, and then if you are alone as a woman, you feel, you become to understand that the only good thing that you can do for that baby is to end the pregnancy. So one of my desire is to be, sorry.
Don't you worry.
I knew it. To be in the doctor office, to give to this woman my experience. Sorry. I still, after 15 years, this is so heartbreaking to me. So I wanted to be there to give to this other woman my experience, my friendship, and the other side of the story. So in the months between Davide's birth and this news, we were never left alone. Like the experience on Ashley and Nate, there was no one day that we didn't receive a phone call, an email, a message from friends all over the world, people that we didn't even know, that were telling us that they were praying from this baby, from his health and his life. At that point, we found out he was a boy, and we decided to call him Davide. And Davide in Hebrew, so we could respect also Rick tradition, means he is loved. Davide was loved even before he was born. And at birth, when Davide was born in the middle of the summer, and he just had Down syndrome. And when he was alive, and that for me was the only thing I cared for. And he reminded me of Carlo, that is the only boy with Down syndrome that I knew at that time. And Carlo's dad, that is one of our friends, dear friends, they were in Italy when Davide was born. So they wrote us a welcome email to us to welcome Davide. And among the many things that they told us, sharing their experience with Carlo, there was this phrase that I keep going back to that said, that the only thing you can do is to love Davide as he is, and he will be who he is. I have to say that was not always easy. Davide spent the first 18 days in the NICU. He had to have transfusion, he had non-heart to have a surgery, but his heart was not acting well, and now he had to vision problem, hearing problems, he had to wear special shoes that support his ankle, and at one point he also had this very cute, very tight suit to support his low muscle tone. So it's true, I had to go through many more specialists, thousands, I can't even remember, than his siblings, but also gave me the opportunity to meet so many other families that were going through experience having kids with disability. I remember once I was invited by my neighbor to a meeting. It was a support group, and I really felt I really don't need a support group. I have already all my friends. But not to be rude, I went. And so the first, thinking this will be my first and last. And when I was there were like 50, 60 moms, different ages, with kids of different disabilities. Actually, I felt I was the lucky one. I heard so many dramatic stories. And but none of them were describing, when they were talking about their kids, were describing the limitation of their kids, of the disability. They were only point out to the fact that their life, they could not live without those kids, that they could not have a life different than what they had. So that I left that meeting thinking, I want to be friends with these people. I want to know the way, I want to learn the way they love those kids unconditionally. So I can say that after 15 years of life with Davide, I am the one that is helped by him. He is a way to be in reality, to love, to learn by affection. He doesn't put anything in between the reality and himself. He doesn't have all these if, buts that I constantly put on. So I want for myself to have this experience of simplicity and humility in front of reality, because only through, when I'm in this way, when I'm simple and I can embrace reality as it is, I am more human, because my freedom is in action. I have to embrace as this reality comes. I say also humility because I got disappointed many times, and reality disappointed you. And but I'm going back to that experience of preference, of the fact that I am wanted. I felt preferred. And so this is a work that I have constantly do for myself, to be in that position of accepting. I forgot. The reason why I say humility, the reality disappointed, and sometimes you really feel naked in front of you, but also you recognize that when you accepted reality as it comes, because it's given, you are free, you are more human. And just a few more examples to make you understand how simply Davide is. He doesn't give anything for granted. He keeps asking me every single night to put a lovey note under his pillow so he can find it the morning after. He has a stack of lovey notes for all these years that he kept. And he also... and also he's telling me how much he loves me. Like, I love you from Italy to Kansas. These are the two extreme points, the farthest that he knows. So he also has a sensibility for which when he can understand when I'm down, when I am sad. So he acting like a clown, he makes me laugh. Or when there is tension between me and Rick, he asks us to kiss. Or old ends. So in front of this, in this sense I say I become more human, because in front of these simple things, at the end, yes, what I want, what I need is this embrace, this holding hands, this kiss. So I want to conclude with a phrase that is written in the book, and it's written by St. Paul, it's in Hebrew 3:13-2. Do not forget hospitality. Some practicing it have welcomed angels without knowing it. Thank you.
Okay. Just a little. Go ahead.
Bye.
Weren't you going to speak too?
I was supposed to talk.
The best part.
You don't eat at the 7 Loaves if you don't say something. You don't get the dinner if you don't say something.
Oh, okay. So I'm very grateful for this opportunity, because it's been several weeks that I live in a different way, with an attention that I think anyhow we should all always have, but we don't. At least I don't. And this invitation to speak here gave me an urgency to actually live. And the other thing is that she's not supposed to be the one that cries. All of my friends know. That's mine. Anyhow, so I'm going to just say some quick points for me that were very significant in the life of Davide. And the first was when we found out that there was a good chance that he would have Down syndrome. He says no. And after talking and leaving the office, my first thought then was that Jesus is coming home. Jesus is coming to our home in a physical way. In a physical way, Jesus is coming. And I didn't think this next thought at that time, but now I think that whenever there's an unconditional embrace, that's something that's not really human. It's more, it's beyond. I think whenever there's an unconditional embrace, in fact, Jesus is present, consciously or otherwise. So I thought that Jesus was coming. And then the next thing, I have a few pictures to show of Davide, because the next point was that the fact that for us, Davide was an amazing little boy. I think they're going to put pictures up. Oh, okay. So I don't see. Okay.
It's okay.
Anyhow, so when Davide's happy, it's not the same as other people being happy. When Davide's happy, because all three are happy, but Davide is clamorous, he's exuberant, he's explosive. And the next picture.
Oh. I thought you were...
Oh, sorry. Okay. Oops.
Can't go
Okay,
back.
but anyhow, these pictures show, to me anyhow, the heart of Davide. Sweet, transparent, open, very, very simple, and totally present. That like Chiara was saying, that when there's a problem around him, like when I would need something, and my tendency is, when I really need someone, my tendency is to retreat, to escape, to go away, to be by myself. And the only person who would come to get me would be Davide. He would know, he would somehow know, and whatever that meant, he would come to comfort me. And it's funny because he does the same thing. When he needs to be comforted, he goes off by himself. So I go get him. But this was something that for us, for me, Davide was too much, almost too much in his sweetness and the affection. And And so I used to wonder, why did we get this gift? And for a long time, I was wondering and praying, were we given this gift? I had an intuition. It's not a claim to revelation, but I had the intuition that my love for Davide was a little tiny taste of God's love for me. My love for Davide was something particular, as singular, and I thought this was a taste of God's love for me, that God's love for me should become real in an experience. Okay, fast forward. Davide, as a preteen and a teenager, started to become, and still is becoming, more and more defiant. So the simple sweetness of his first 10 years became a little bit muddy and complicated. I would react, because I know, okay, you have to brush your teeth or you have to go to bed. And so I was no longer able to just win the arguments. So then it was frustrating and confusing, and I didn't know, should I do this or that? And in fact, not that long ago, there was a moment like this where I was like on a very short fuse, ready to just get angry, explode, and just give up. And there was a grace. It was a particular, just a simple grace in that moment that when I was ready to explode, I just stopped. That was the grace. What followed was beautiful, but the grace was to stop, to look, to be with Davide instead of with what Davide needed or supposedly needed. And so, because I know how he is, how he needs to be held, so instead of trying to force him to do what he needed to do, I just stopped to hold him. He needed to be held. I did too. And that's become a very educational thing to me. It's not that, therefore, that the relationship is sweetness and hugs, but to stop and to look and to be there. Like that Davide is a gift, and so you take him in. You take him in to experience how he is. Then there's another moment, again, not long ago, when Davide was in a basketball practice with a Catholic group that of kids his age, but far beyond him in every way. So there was a coach, and they were going through exercises which Davide couldn't do. They were very serious in doing their exercises, the drills, and still the coach had enough interest in Davide to kind of once in a while give him a pointer on what he should do that was different, that would bring him into the participation. Likewise, when they were playing in teams, that the people on Davide's team would throw him the ball. To me, that was very moving, that they were really serious about what they were doing, but they were also very present to very attentive and very aware of Davide. That to me was very moving. And then I guess it opened me up to the next thing that I felt, which was an awareness of the distance between Davide and the other kids, the distance that grows, the distance that grows, and I would be confident or convinced that distance is not going away. And I felt this pain in my heart for Davide. But immediately, without a moment of reflection or thought, the pain somehow mysteriously was a sweet thing. That the pain somehow, that I don't understand, the pain was my love for him, and that my love for him was the pain. I can't explain better than that. But it was an important, precious moment to me. And so I realize from these things, something that I realized many times, that when something is given, I want it in my heart. I want to take it in. I want to taste it in myself, in my heart, and to taste it as it is. Not to taste it in a way that's like saccharine sweet, or everything is nice, like something that causes me frustration. I think that the frustration is part of the gift. Okay, strange, I don't know. Anyhow, that the pain is part of the gift. Mm-hmm. I think that The point is that in what is given to me, there really is something for me. There's really something for me. This is like an article of faith that I've been recalled to again and again in all kinds of different circumstances, in a particular way with Davide. So that's what I leave. Thank you.
Okay, we're going to go directly to our final panelist, Hashmat Wali, a native of Kabul, Afghanistan. He has a bachelor's degree in business administration with a major in finance. He now is working with the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops, manager of financial reporting, and the story that he has to go from Kabul to working for the Bishops' Conference is quite a story. So his, Hashmatullah is a slightly different story. So he's going to be speaking more about, in a way, being the recipient of hospitality, sort of the other end. So you could begin, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, New York Encounter, for giving me this opportunity here to share my story with everyone. So I have slides for, if you guys can play that one. Yeah. So my journey starts from Kabul, Afghanistan, where I born, all the way down to the Virginia, USA. Everyone knows that Afghanistan has been in war for 40 years. First, there was conflict between themselves, tribal wars. Then there was Soviet Union wars. And after that, after the attack of 9/11, the Taliban wars. So when the war, I don't know why it's not changing. Oh, there it is. These are the pictures from 1960s of Afghanistan. It was all normal country. Everyone was like going to school, have their economics, women were allowed to go to educations and everything. But after that, the tribal wars started. It's like slowly, the country was piecing apart. Then the Soviet Union attacked. Then the US came to bring us freedom, to bring us hope, to bring us new stuff for us. Right after 9/11 attack, US start their fight with the Taliban to give us, like me, for several other peoples, a new life. When the attack happened, everyone was, the way right now it is, was back in other countries. They traveled as an immigrant to Pakistan, India, Tajikistan, all around because of those Mujahideen wars, Soviet Union wars, and so on, so on. When country got their freedom back, everyone came back to the country. I still remember I was 11 or 10 years old when we came back from Pakistan to our country. Then we stayed there for a couple of years. Then I went abroad for my educations because on that time there was no better education. So my parents decided to take me out of the country for my education to learn something, to build my own country back from scratch. So I did my education, then I came back to country to start my new internship with a company called Morris Tobin. This is the picture where I started my new career. Then the new chapter of my life has started. I got married in October 2022. The first picture is, in the left side is my wedding picture, and the second one is like my baby, new baby born. He born on 22nd August. There's something wrong with the typo. Ignore that one, please. So right after the born of my baby in August, the country started collapsing. Every day, one province was getting in the hands of Taliban. There was so frustration. There was so much difficulties going on with the country. After one day that we were sleeping, the night that everyone was like shocking, like there was voice, the Taliban attacked the country again, the capital. The Taliban took the presidential palace on 15th of August, 2022. That was the day that the government shut down, our president ran away from the country and left everything behind. The system that we built for like 22 years, from all around, I mean like from zero, from scratch, everyone tried to build the country. In just one night, everything gone down. And the other pictures, you guys can see that everyone is trying to get out of the country because everyone knows that there's no hope. There's no life anymore because everyone had the Taliban sense that when they came back, they are not normal people. They are beasts. They are terrorists. They will not allow anyone to go for education. They will not ever allow people to have their own life. They will not allow people to do their things that they want. So everyone was trying to get out of the country. On those days, I remember that I was nearly losing hope because I worked for U.S. Department of State and Department of Defense contractors for about 9 years. So I was the primary target for Taliban. Not only me, my whole family was a primary target for them. For 2 weeks, when the Taliban invaded Afghanistan back, for 2 weeks I was running from one room to another, from one place to another place to hide from them, because if they got me, they would have killed me. Not only me, my whole family. After 2 weeks, suddenly a miracle happened. Everyone was at home that our chairman called us, we got you guys escort. So we will take you, get out of the country, take you guys to a safer place. We went to airport. There was thousands of people climbing on each other to get out of the country. It was not easy. I had my life in country, in Afghanistan. That's my hometown. I had everything there. I left everything. I had only 1 hour to pack everything that I had with me to take it out of the country, where it was impossible. Everyone knows that. So it was not an easy journey, but we had to, because I could have not risked my 20 days old baby that he was just born in the country. I left him in the hands of terrorists to kill them. So I took the decision to, okay, I will leave the country. I packed everything with only one backpack. I still remember, you guys will see in the pictures later, that it was only the documents and some few cash with us. Then we get to the airport. The people was crying, shouting to take us out of the country. We don't want to live here because this country is not anymore the country that we will live. Because everyone knows that. Now everyone might know in the news as well that Taliban are not allowing girls to go to school, to go to education centers. Even they are stopping the girls, for those that they are doctors, to help other female. So this was not acceptable for me, for my family, and for those that they wanted to get out of the country. Because if a boy can study, why not a girl? What is the difference between them? So we ran out of the country. We came to Qatar. We stayed there for 3 nights. We were in Qatar. So from there, the hospitality starts. From there, I learned that how U.S. people, how they are, how their hospitality are. It was not only the people, the army, the marine, the doctors, everyone. My son was fully burned because he was just 20 days old that we get out of the country. In Qatar, the temperature was really high. We saw that there was thousands and thousands and thousands of people were lying on the streets or in the camp, under the nets, everywhere. The people, U.S. people, helped everyone there, from the doctor, from the marine, from everyone, just to help us to get in a place that we want, just to live in a free, I can say in a free, they wanted to give us a freedom that we want to. This is the picture from the last day of the office. I was working in a company, Morris Stephen, as an international firm. So this was the last picture. If you guys have seen my hands, that was my last salary that I picked. This is my baby. He was just 20 days old that when we left the country. These are the backpacks that I was talking about. We left, I remember that my dad telling us the same story that I'm going through right now. They told us when I just born, they had to run away from the country. The same thing after when the US gave us freedom back, we came to Afghanistan. I said, like, we start new life. We try to construct our country. We brought new educators and everything. But suddenly, out of nowhere, in one night, we lost everything. Everything. These are the buses that they took us inside the airport. There was thousands of people that I told, like, they were wanting to get out of the country, but nobody get lucky. I mean, like, those that they are out now, but most of them are died over there. Most of them, you might have seen the news that they were climbing on the US Army planes to want to get out of the country. Why? Because the country was not safe anymore. Because they knew that they were facing a lot of problems later, because nobody believes on Taliban government anymore. I don't know what happened with the slides. We stayed in the airport for one night over trash. Not only me, my family, my mom, my dad, my siblings, other people as well. I still remember I went to one of the Marines. They were standing there, and I asked them, can you get us something? It's like, right now we don't have anything for you, but definitely we can help your baby because we have plenty of formulas for your baby. I saw it's like how, and there I was like, see the gratitude of the people, that how they are helping others, how they didn't had much sleep enough. Their shift was only 4 hours break, but the whole night they were standing, helping us, guarding us, to get us out of the country with all those hospitality that they gave us. These are the foods that they gave us on the airport. This is my little brother. These are the airport pictures. And this is the plane. I always, watching the US Army planes when they were like in the movies, like Tom Cruise movies and other kind of movies, I was like, I didn't have any experience. I was like, how the people were sitting in there. It's like there will be chair or not. But when I went to the plane, inside of the plane, I saw that it was like, oh my goodness, it's not possible, but we have to. There was no chairs enough for all the people. In one plane, the plane carried over 800 people in one plane, and that's the live picture that I took on that time. It was like people were sitting for 4 hours without food, without water, and the temperature was very high, just to get a freedom, because in our country there was no more freedom. This is Qatar picture. And when we arrived in Qatar, they gave us shelters for 2-3 days. They gave us food, medicine, and everything. They helped us to get out of there, to take us to the US. These are the US Army that are helping everyone. And finally, we reached to the US, Dallas Airport. When we reached in Dallas Airport, I still remember I didn't have sleep straightly for 48 hours. I didn't eat anything at all, just to help my family, because in my whole family, there was only 2 people that can speak English. It was one, me and my wife, and we were a huge family. We didn't want to be distracted, or we didn't want to break down in the middle way of coming, because there was a lot of people, hustles and going down. So I didn't have much sleep. When I arrived in Dallas Airport, I asked the immigration officer when we get inside the airport, and I told him, like, can I sleep for just 2 hours? He says, like, we will give you a nice bed, pillow, everything, because now you're safe. Don't worry about anything. Just go sleep. I told him, it's like, I didn't have any sleep for 48 hours because to helping my family. He says, like, now you're in good hands. Don't worry about anything. Just go and sleep. So I went for like 5 to 8 hours sleep straight in the Dallas airport. After that, one of the Marine officers came and told us, like, now it's time to move you guys to Wisconsin for all other paperworks. They took us to Wisconsin Fort McCoy camp. We stayed there for 2 months. Yeah, almost 2 months we were there to complete our paperwork, checkups, and everything. We didn't have anything. It was only a backpack. On that backpack, it was the important documents, like my education documents, my work documents, and like sort of cash with us. There was people coming, giving us free food. They were bringing food, they were bringing clothes for us, they were bringing medicines and everything to help us. Because they didn't have any obligation to do that one, but the gratitude that they were showing us, the hospitality that they were showing us was phenomenal. So after 2 months staying in the Fort McCoy, we get out of the country. I was so desperate. I told you guys that it was my first time coming to US. I only saw US and Marvel movies. It's like the Spider-Man is like down, or the Avengers and all those stuff. So the first thing that I did is, like, when I get out of the camp, there was one of our friends. His name was David. He became friends in Fort McCoy. He said, like, I will take you to the capital, I will take you to DC, I will take you to these areas. So it's like, that's really good. There's a picture that I took. This is the first picture. When I arrived in DC, I was like taking the picture. I was so happy that, like, I got everything. Like, now I'm free. I don't have fear that my sisters will no longer go to school. I don't have that fear. Now I'm free. I can do whatever I want. I can continue my education. Not me, my brother, my siblings, my whole family. And the hospitality that U.S. people showed us, the Lutheran social services, the Catholic church, the Ethiopian church, they was all helping us. They were coming to our house. They were helping us, bringing us food, clothes, blankets, tables, everything to help us. And we were very, very thankful for everyone. We are very, very thankful for those that they help us. We are really thankful for all those Marines that they work all days and nights to help us to get out of the country. We owe to these people. We owe to this country. And I'm here to help in any way that I can do. I mean, like, when after 2 or 3 months, I was start searching jobs. Then I went to the USCCB. I got the interview. I got the job. Then I see the connection, a miracle connection that I had there. Is like USCCB is helping. Is a church that helping everyone. And no matter from where it comes, no matter from which religion they are, no matter from which country they are coming, they're helping. So I feel like this is a God connection with me and USCCB, that right now I'm here to help the way I got help, so I will help others. There was a little journey of me to coming all the way from Kabul to Afghanistan. Thank you so much, everyone.
Just a very short comment of conclusion. To return to the beginning, as I spoke of the content of the miracle of hospitality, Giussani's point was we look to these people because they show us the right posture of life, and that's why I'm very grateful for our panelists today, because they did just that. So please give them.
Thank you.
One important announcement. You're part of the New York Encounter, a place that welcomes everybody. Help us keep it alive. We invite you to give generously at our donation table over there by the information desk outside this auditorium, or you can donate from the website. Thank you very much.